Hey, welcome back to Rust Order Garage. It is time to continue on the 56 Chevy Pickup $5,000 budget build. First off, you guys are supposed to be keeping me honest here, and I forgot to put the gas tank straps on. So we got to put those on. And right with this thing moving. That was 15. Cost me 15, worth 15, brings us to a nice easy number. Where are we? Here we are. 3,100, or out of pocket, 1,700. So there's where we are so far on the budget. Doing pretty good. Next thing on the truck will be filling this space. It's time to swing a motor and trans in here, but not before I show you what I've done, because I did video some of it and scrapped it because it was, I guess, what I'd consider a filler video. Lots of just dirty welding, grinding, cutting work. But here's what's happened since the last video. So, up front here, remove the remainder of the front cross member that was left over. Remove the transmission cross member that was in the truck. Finished welding in the IFS. It's all in there. And trimmed the frame rails to make it all look factory. Put the front sway bar on. Swung that up into place, marked the holes. Welded 3/16 plate in here with welded nuts, because I'm going to box the frame rail there. And I wanted to have something strong, because the sway bar puts a lot of stress on the frame, and never had one. So I figured I'd show you that before I box it in. So that's 3/16 plate welded nut to secure the front cross member. I think that is it for up front. Oh yeah, also put the reliefs in the frame for the upper control arm clearance. Lots of room there now, so that'll looks good. Let me show you the back. And oh wait, oh nope, more stuff. See, I don't even remember all the stuff I did. I removed the front mounts for the leaf springs. Those are gone. Also, for those playing the home game, forgot about this. I cut holes in the bottom frame rail. This was already partially curved down from factory, which is cool, but I brought it down the rest of the way to meet up to the jag. So it's plug welded here, 6 places, and perimeter welded all the way around. So it's not going to move. So that's how I installed it. It's different. Similar but different in every truck. It all depends on the frame dimensions and the curve of the bottom and such, but that pretty much is how you do it. Perimeter weld it, and I weld it to the inside, and then it'll get boxed and hide all of it. Okay, in the back of the frame, for those playing along at home, ended up with my front spring hanger, front bolt 10 inches back from the cab mount. And you can see I have little spacers in there. They're actually just thick washers that'll end up getting welded to the frame, because the frame has these reinforcing, I'll say, bulges or punches there. So this wouldn't sit flat to the frame rail. So I have little spacers there. We'll weld those to the frame, and that'll be just fine. So that's that dimension. Then the rear spring hanger. The front hole here is 65 inches center line. Again, measuring back from here on the cab mount. Now I also lowered the spring hanger. You can see there that it's hanging below the frame rail, and I welded in heavy angle iron to the frame there to pick up the lower 2 bolts. As far as the upper 2 bolts, the reason there's no bolts in there is because I welded in 3/16 plate inside and welded the nuts in there, so that when this is boxed, you don't have to try to get in here to the nuts, because you never will. Same thing with the bumper. I found out from looking online at the pictures that these are tight, that the bumper uses these 2 bottom holes here. So same deal, welded in 3/16 plate in there with welded in nuts, so that once the gas tank's in, all this stuff can be mounted without having to try to get in there with any kind of tools or anything. One last thing I forgot, rear of the frame. I welded these tubes in the back corners. Those are for the bolts that hold the rearmost bed cross member in. So now the bolt goes all the way through the frame and you just tighten it up on the bottom. And the tube keeps the frame from collapsing when you tighten it down. Again, because once the gas tank's in and this area is boxed, you won't be able to get to any of this stuff. And there is still more framework to do. That was basically trying to get all the things done that are going to be hidden behind the boxed areas. So I just wanted to show them to you. For those who already know how to do this stuff, it's no big deal. But for those who've never done it, it's just extra things that you have to take into account once you box the frame and never be able to get to those areas. So, and it's good to strengthen them up with the plate anyway, just to make sure it's strong. Still have to go back in the frame. There's a whole bunch of holes I want to weld shut on the rails, extra holes that are left over from the old spring hangers and that kind of stuff. It's all work that nobody will ever see and nobody really care about except for the builder, but I think it makes for a cleaner build in the end. All right, here's what we've got. And if you've been following the build, you know this is a 2001 5.3 4L60E. Only 144,000 miles, just a baby compared to what I usually am putting into cars. But yeah, here it is as I removed it, complete, and then some. Everything's on it. I'm still undecided whether I'm going to use this factory harness or use an eBay harness. I just don't know. I'm going back and forth on it in my head. We'll figure it out. But I'll explain why I'm not sure, but you know, we'll get into all that mess. But when it gets to that point of wiring, but right now I have to get this pretty much cleaned up so I can fly it in and start working on engine mounts, transmission mounts and such. So I'm going to remove the obviously top cover, wiring harness, going to remove the fan, coil packs just so they don't get broken, spark plugs just so they don't get broken, motor mounts will come off because I'm going to use different ones. And I don't know, maybe I'll pull the accessory drive off as well just to make things easier. But yeah, let's get started. I'm not going to record all this because it'll just bore you. But either way, cruise control's off, throttle cable's off. Just want to mention that I'm going to try to make this factory throttle cable work. That's why it's a good thing to save everything from your donor vehicle. You never know. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but it's good to have it. All right, I'm getting down to the end of stripping the wiring off of this engine. And this is one thing that can trip you up if you've never done this before. The connectors that plug into your neutral safety switch, range switch, reverse light switch, whatever you want to call it, have adhesive from the factory. And you can't just disconnect and take them out because you'll most likely break the connector. So what you got to get is a heat gun. Warm it up. And warm up the joint to soften up that glue that's in there. And you don't have to melt the connector, but you got to warm it up enough to get it broken free. And it comes right apart when it's warm. And you can see the glue on the connector there. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but there's glue on those. And they come right apart with that heat. One other thing is when you're taking the wiring off, I am labeling every connector
with a tag. You can buy a box of these label tags or whatever you want to call them with the wire on the ends for cheap on Amazon. I think I've got about 1,000 of them. And you label everything when you take the wiring off. Even though I know pretty much where everything goes, it's one thing when you're laying it on the engine. It's another thing if you have it on a table. And then you got to remember what's what. So I label everything because I don't know if I'm going to use this harness yet or not. But if I'm reworking it, I want to know what everything is, whether I'm keeping it or not.
There's the engine. Got the wiring off, engine mounts, fan. You know, you get it. Pretty much everything just taken off. No real need to show that stuff. One thing that will be done, because this is a 2001, it had EGR. So we got a big old hole in the side of the intake manifold from the EGR valve. What I'm going to do is just cut this and weld it up and make this an EGR block off. You can either do that or snag one off of a, probably I think it's a 2002 or up, used no EGR, so you can just get a block off plate for that. The one thing I did leave on is the AC compressor. And the reason for that is I'm putting AC in this truck. I have noticed that this month has been hot as all get out. I mean, Jesus, it is really hot every day. And either I'm getting soft or whatever, but I like to sit in the air conditioning. So I'm putting AC in this truck and probably going to retrofit the Buick. Maybe not the Buick because that doesn't get driven as much. But the Hudson, I think that would definitely put some AC in that as well. And we're talking low buck AC. So the reason I left, and we'll go over all that when we do it, obviously, but the reason I left the compressor on is because I want to make sure my engine mounts are going to be clear of the compressor and have no problem with that, because I'm going to use all the factory stuff as far as I can and make it all work.
All right, so here's the plan. Will it work? I don't know. We'll see. I've got a swap meet second generation Camaro crossmember. That I know I can make work because they fit everything. They're great. Then I'm going to use these adapter plates. I think they're like $22. I'll look it up and add it to the tally. The crossmember, I know that's no more than $20. I usually don't even pay that, especially in that rusty condition. And then for mounts, I'm going to use standard Chevy small block, big block style. Solid mount on driver's side and a rubber mount on the passenger side. This is probably 100 years old. Just dug it out of storage. And this is a swap meet deal. I buy them at swap meets when I can for usually like 10 bucks a pair. They're nothing. So the deal is I'm going to bolt the plates on, put the mount on, and see if it clears the AC compressor. As long as it looks like it will, then I have something to work with, and we'll fly this in and get started. Okay, let's see how this works out. Look, instructions. Doesn't mean anything to me. This is custom. All right, so we got D, assume that's driver's side. P, passenger side. All right. Let's see. Now that's probably backwards, right? Yep. So, does that mean this is not possible with the AC compressor? Somehow, I can't see how that is possible because I did this on the Hudson and I made sure I had room for the AC compressor. Now, if I use the rearmost set of holes, I think I can do that. But then I have to cut this, and this is not solid. So that's kind of not cool because that takes away some strength. But I can do it. Let me do some measuring, see what we're going to do here. All right, first round of butchery in progress. Cut the front off of that mount. Now I just want to see what we're looking like for space. What I'm hoping is I can cut this even more, because there's a couple sets of holes. Right now I have it assuming I would have to be far forward as possible. I'm hoping that I can bring it back one. And the reason I'm even considering this, because of course this is all custom, so I can make whatever I want, right? Well, I would like this to line up somewhat with the pads on the Jaguar crossmember, and I can just make stands to bolt right to the Jag and reach up to this. And rather than have those stands be going crooked and all over, it'd be nice if they just went straight up and picked up these mounts. Now, is it possible even to do this? Let's see. Looks like no. Maybe there. Yeah. I think I can get there. Whew, even that's tight. It's tight. Now, if I ran these solid style mounts, I could do it no problem, because these are pretty compact. But I don't like to run solids on both sides. It's not the way I want it to be, because that can get a little bit too rough. I'd rather have some compliance in it if possible. All right, let the craziness continue. Nothing is ever easy, even just bolting an engine mount on. So, and I think that's because they assume you're not going to use the AC compressor in a factory location. But I look at it like, it's already there. If I can make it fit, it doesn't cost anything to leave it there, so we're going to give it a shot. So as far as my mount, and I doubt they figure anybody's using these 1964 to 72 style mounts either. They probably figure using clamshells, which are huge, but I don't use those because they're huge and I just don't use them. I trimmed off an interlock leg on one side of here, which is fine. This mount will never break. Being on the passenger side, they do not break on that side, only driver's side. And now it'll fit no problem. I should have left my power steering box on here just to make sure that's not going to be in the way, but I can always trim off this front piece of the bracket if I had to. I don't like that these are windowed out. I know that they're like that for the clamshells because they have bumps on the back, but man, you could just put a dent in them. Be a lot stronger, I think. Now, this is where I put my other one. Basically as far back as I can go, but still forward of, well, not centered in the bolt holes for the mounts. So far forward toward the front. You know what I mean. I can't speak right now. This was supposed to be a quick and dirty job. All day this has taken me. Don't know why. Everything takes too long. All right. That is where that mount's going to be. Now, let's put this in and see what it looks like. All right, let's fly it in and see what happens. If I can, I'm over to the side. Let's see. bar is going to have to go up. Lift will not make it. We're getting there. All right, now we gotta come down some. Let me get a jack. Transmission. All right, we're getting there. Now we got to go down. Ooh, we did it. Nice. Wow, that's almost perfect. How did we get that lucky? That is not perfect. Okay, so I can tell already, the engine mounts did not work out like that. No big deal. We'll just go to plan B. All right, so I got the engine just sitting here. Throw a piece of wood under the pan in the front, and the cross member's not under the end transmission, but it's sort of under the transmission. Let me show you why this is not going to work. You see my mount is there, and there's the pad, so you can see the relationship. I was hoping that this was going to line up somewhat over those pads, but they don't. So that means we're going to change direction and use a different style engine mount. No problem, just it is what it is. When you build custom stuff, things change. So I'm going to remove those. But first, since I have the engine kind of sitting in here, I'm going to put the transmission cross member under it and show you what that looks like and why those Camaro cross members work so well, and see what we're looking for spacing. Excuse me. All right, so here's what I'm looking at, just stabbing it in there. Cross member is going to fit the frame perfectly. Now, right now, transmission would need to come up if I don't modify the cross member, which means the engine would have to come up, which may not be such a bad thing because I got plenty of room to move up. And if I raise the engine and transmission a couple inches, the truck pan may actually work. That would be unreal if that really works out, because it looks like I should come up, because look how low my transmission is to the frame line. I mean, I like to have stuff tucked up higher than that. So I'm gonna raise this up a little bit and see what things look like. All right, I'm jockeying some things around here because one other thing you have to take into account. Drive shaft. And we have a cross member right here. So if the transmission's too high and the drive shaft's gonna crash into the cross member, you can cut it and put like a drive shaft loop in it. That would work. But it looks like I'm gonna be good. I have the crank at a 3-degree down angle front, which is what I want. the truck oil pan is hanging down maybe 1 inch below the rack, I can live with that. That's not bad. That's amazing. And the drive shaft, I just stuck one in here. I can go completely just about straight, putting the pinion up so high that it would crash into the bed well before it would ever get that high. So that's going to work. I do have to modify the transmission cross member. Big deal. That's like nothing. Really stepped in it on this one. Let me tell you. This is like unheard of. I haven't had one yet where I could use the truck oil pan. And this truck is going to be low. It's going to, you know, and that's perfectly acceptable. No issues with that. So that just saved $130 off the budget, plus the time of swapping the pan. Fantastic. Gotta love it. This is really working out well. Really working out well. Let me show you what it looks like up top. Sitting in the frame, looks good to me. It doesn't look ridiculously high. Good placement. Plenty of clearance behind the valve covers. Of course, because the coils on this side I think are closer. Plenty of room there. Plenty of room everywhere. I think that's going to work out perfect. I still have to center it up a little bit. I think it might be off a 1/2 inch or something. But that looks good to me. I think that's going to do fine. The only thing that didn't work out was the engine mounts. But I have an idea for that. All right, so that's going to be it for this video. Next video will obviously be continuing on the engine and transmission install, and I will try to show as much detail as I can on what has to be done, including all the wiring, which I still haven't decided whether I'm going to use the factory harness or use an eBay harness. I don't know. I also have to, I got to update the price list. I got to update the budget, but we'll do that on the next video. So we'll see you then. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for following, and thank you for subscribing, getting a lot of new subscribers. I hope this is interesting and maybe help you out, which is the whole idea of it. So we'll see you soon. Later.